Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Barr, I commend your candor in calling what happened in 2016 what it is, which is spying the Trump campaign and spying on the President of the United States. I'd like to talk a little bit more about spying. Counterintelligence investigations like the one that we now know the FBI launched against candidate Trump and President Trump, those are designed to thwart spying and sabotage. Is that correct?
That's correct.
To your knowledge, has the FBI ever launched a counterintelligence investigation of another president that you're aware of?
Not to my knowledge.
So it's safe to say that to your knowledge, this move was completely unprecedented?
To my knowledge.
Would it be unusual, in your experience and to your knowledge, for FBI agents to hide the existence and results of an investigation, such an investigation, from their superiors?
Did you say, would it be typical?
No, would it be unusual?
Very unusual.
Yes. And in fact, that is indeed what press reports suggest happened here. When FBI officials hide investigations from superiors, is there anybody to hold them accountable? I mean, what happens in that instance?
There is no accountability.
Have you looked into the decision by the FBI into why they launched a counterintelligence investigation?
I am looking into it, and I have looked into it.
And will you commit to telling us what you find as the result of your own review and investigation?
Well, at the end of the day, when I form conclusions, I intend to share it.
I'll take that as a yes. Let me ask you about the 25th Amendment, if I might, for just a moment. We know that former acting director of the FBI, Andy McCabe, he's publicly confirmed that he contemplated forcing the president from office using the 25th Amendment. To your knowledge, have FBI officials ever contemplated forcing any other president from office against his will using that provision?
Not to my knowledge.
The 25th Amendment contemplates the vice president taking over as president when the president is unable to act. Would you agree that that text contemplates physical ailments like a coma, mental incapacitation, not just political differences of opinion?
Yes.
Have you ever doubted, since you have been in your current position, whether this president is physically able, in a constitutional sense, to discharge his duties as president?
No.
Would you agree that discussions within the FBI of forcing the president out of office for political reasons gives the public, at best, reason to question what the FBI is doing and to fear that there may be abuses of power in that organization?
I think it gives reason to be concerned about those particular individuals that were involved. I don't attribute it to the organization. Speaking
of particular individuals who are involved, I have to say, I've listened to this testimony all day today, and to me, maybe the most shocking thing I've heard is this. Chairman read it earlier. August 26th, 2016. This is a text message from Peter Strzok, a top counterintelligence investigator who we now know helped launch this counter-spy investigation of the President of the United States. Peter Strzok says, just went to a Southern Virginia Walmart. I could smell the Trump support. Smell is capitalized. Just went to a Southern Virginia Walmart. I could smell the Trump support. My view, you want to know what's really going on here? You want to know why the counterintelligence investigation really happened? You want to know why we're all really sitting here today? That's why, right there. Is because an unelected bureaucrat, an unelected official in this government who clearly has open disdain, if not outright hatred, for Trump voters, like the people of my state, for instance. I could smell the Trump support, then tried to overturn the results of a Democratic election. That's what's really gone on here. That's the story. That's why we're here today. I cannot believe that a top official of this government, with the kind of power that these people had, would try to exercise their own prejudices, and that's what this is. It's open, blatant prejudice. Would try to use that in order to overturn a Democratic election. And to my mind, that's the real crisis here. And it is a crisis, because if there's not accountability, if this can go on in the United States of America, well, then my goodness gracious, we don't have a democracy anymore. So I appreciate your leadership, Mr. Attorney General. I look forward to hearing the results of your investigation, and I look forward to this committee continuing its constitutional responsibility to find out what is going on here and making sure that the will of the people is vindicated and established. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Attorney General Barr, for being here today. You've been very adroit and agile in your responses to questions here, but I think history will judge you harshly and maybe a bit unfairly, because you seem to have been the designated fall guy for this report. And I think that conclusion is inescapable in light of the 4-page summary and then the press conference you did on the day it was released, knowing that you had in hand a letter from the special counsel saying that he felt that you mischaracterized his report. And you were asked by one of my colleagues, Senator Van Hollen, whether you knew that Bob Mueller supported your conclusion, and you said, I don't know whether Bob Mueller supported my conclusion. You were asked by Representative Chris.
Excuse me, Senator. That conclusion was not related to my description of the findings in the March 24th letter. That conclusion refers to my conclusion on the obstruction cases. So it's a different conclusion. It was exactly the same
conclusions that was used by Special Counsel Mueller. And on the obstruction issue, at page 8 and 182 of the report, I don't know whether you have it in front of you, the special counsel specifically said, at the same time, I'm quoting, if we had confidence after a thorough investigation of the facts that the president clearly did not commit obstruction of justice, we would so state. He said it again at page 182, and yet in your summary and in the press conference that you did, you in effect cleared the president on both so-called collusion.
The difference is I used the proper standard. That statement you just read is actually a very strange statement for a prosecutor.
4 of the specific obstruction episodes, Robert Mueller concluded that there was substantial evidence on the 3 necessary elements of obstruction.
Well, you're a prosecutor.
I have to finish my question.
Okay. Well, you haven't let me finish my answer.
Well, let me just finish the question.
We can do both.
All right, good.
You ignored in that press conference and in the summary that Robert Mueller found substantial evidence, and it's in the report. And we have a chart that shows the elements of that crime: intent, interference with an ongoing investigation, and the obstructive act. So I think that your credibility is undermined within the department, in this committee, and with the American people. And I want to ask you whether on those remaining investigations, the 12 to 14 investigations, whether you have had any communication with anyone in the White House.
No.
And will you give us an ironclad commitment that you will in no way interfere?
By the way, I'm not sure, the laundry list of investigations, but I certainly haven't talked the substance or been directed to do anything on any of the cases.
Well, let me give you an opportunity to clarify.
Yeah.
Have you had any conversations with anyone in the White House about those ongoing investigations that were spawned or spun off by...
I don't recall having any substantive discussion on the investigation.
Have you had any non-substantive discussion?
I mean, it's possible that a name of a case was mentioned.
And have you provided information about any of those ongoing investigations? Any information whatsoever?
I don't recall, no.
You don't recall?
I don't recall providing any.
Wouldn't you recall about whether you gave information to somebody in the White House about an ongoing criminal investigation in the Southern District of New York, or the Eastern District of New York, or the Eastern District of Virginia, or the Department of Justice?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't recall providing any substantive information about a case.
Is there anything that would refresh your recollection?
If I probably looked over a list of cases and thought about it. But I don't recall discussing.
You know what those investigations are. We've discussed them at your confirmation hearing, correct?
Whether, I think there's 12 or 18 cases, right?
You don't know what those investigations are, Mr. Trent?
I do generally, but I can't remember each of them.
And let me ask you one last time. You can't recall whether you have discussed those cases with anyone in the White House, including the President of the United States?
My recollection is I have not discussed those.
But you don't recall for sure? Let me move on.
I can say very surely I did not discuss the substance of any.
Will you recuse yourself from those investigations?
No.
Let me ask you about a couple of quotes from the President, since a number of my colleagues have raised the Russia investigation. And these are from the report, untruths recited by the report from the President in December of 2016, when President Trump was asked about the intelligence community's conclusion that Russia interfered in our election to boost Trump's chances. He said he had, quote, no idea if it's Russia, China, or somebody. It could be somebody sitting in a bed someplace.
400-pound person.
To give you a sense of how unqualified this nominee is, she listed in her Judiciary questionnaire her top 10 litigated cases. And I just want you to pause and read this for a second. Her top 10, she did a driver's license revocation. She did a second driver's license revocation. She did an unemployment benefits appeal. She did another unemployment benefits case. She did another unemployment benefit case. And her sixth case was an unemployment benefits case where on the opposing side was a pro se litigant. In other words, this poor fella didn't have a lawyer. And you know what? The pro se litigant beat her. She lost to a pro se litigant. What's her seventh most consequential case? I'm sorry, there isn't one. There's not an eighth, there's not a ninth, there's not a 10th. She's argued over a couple of driver's licenses. And the Biden White House says you should be a federal judge, an Article 3 judge, not that you have any idea what in the hell that is. In this